Hello and welcome. I would like to thank you for joining this online training course. It is covering the S questions model, which I developed in my book titled The Mediator's Toolkit, Formulating and Asking Questions for Successful Outcomes. I wish you a wonderful journey of learning. So let's get started. The S questions model has 4 dimensions, and I will go through them individually in a moment, but just for now, briefly, they are the S1, which is the subject matter dimension of questions, S2, which is the structure dimension of questions, S3, which brings in the seeking information dimension of questions, and S4, the shift thinking questions. And more than half of my book has been dedicated to these S4 shift thinking questions. But let me go through each of the dimensions one by one. This is S1, the subject matter. You all know this. You ask questions about the people involved in the conflict, about the environment in which it happens, and you ask lots of questions about the problems that will arise for people within this conflict. And also what I call the PEP interaction, which is how the people, the environment, and the problem interact, influence, and impact on each other. So again, in the book, there are loads of examples of topics that are generally covered in the S1 subject matter dimension of questions. But if you are already out there and mediating, you will be well aware of this dimension to the S questions model. The second dimension you will also be well aware of. These are whether or not you ask closed or open questions. So the structure dimension of the question is really very important. Asking a closed question usually requires a yes or a no response and can sometimes lead to you getting the minimum of information that you might require. Whereas an open question, they're introduced with who or when or where, which, what, how, in what way, what if, or if, and this is the structure of a question which a mediator needs to use in order to bring more information into the mediation room. Rarely use why, and the reason for this is because why can often elicit a response that is defensive and can lead to a person becoming less giving of their information and their knowledge about what happened. It can be the type of question which can lead you to work with a party who's feeling perhaps a little bit judged and therefore will feel quite vulnerable. So eliminate the why questions in all cases in mediation. The S3 are the questions you are familiar with. They are the open questions that seek to find out more information. And what they do is they clarify information and they invite the party's perspective on a conflict. They are the statement from the party's already held beliefs and opinions, and they form the pool of information about the conflict that you are now mediating. These are the S4 shift thinking dimension of questions. These are the reason I developed the S questions model and wrote this book. These are the questions that shift people's thinking by uncovering new information and by creating insight, either by exploring and focusing people's thinking or by connecting and expanding their thinking. These questions were developed to create a paradigm shift in the thinking of parties in mediation. There are 8 shift thinking questions, and each of these questions is covered separately and in detail in each of the training modules. Hazard warnings. There is one very important warning I need to give you. And that is that if you have any concern that asking any of these S4 shift thinking questions in a joint meeting would result in a party becoming vulnerable opposite the other party or parties, then please do check out these questions first at a separate initial meeting before the plenary or the joint meeting, or at a separate caucus meeting during the joint session. I want to move to body language. The verbals that we used when we're communicating to another person convey only 7% of the meaning that they take from what we say. The tone of voice that we use conveys 38% of the meaning that they interpret from what we are saying. And the body language that we demonstrate accounts for 55% of the meaning that is interpreted by the party or the person to whom we're speaking. While asking these questions, especially the S4 shift thinking questions, your body language needs to be really appropriate, gentle, unassuming, and non-judgmental. You need to be innocently curious. When asking these questions, you need to wait until a party has vented all of their negative feelings and until they start to feel comfortable with you as their mediator. Tony Allen, who is a mediator in the UK, gave me a great tip about engaging in separate private meetings with parties. He suggests that you act as if the other absent party is standing behind you and is watching and listening to everything you do and you say. So in asking these S4 shift thinking questions, it's really important, of course, to apply the principles of mediation: impartiality, voluntariness, self-determination, and of course, confidentiality. I have sent you all a document with the case scenario that I am using for each of the film clips for each of the volumes. So you may have read it prior to watching this, but if you haven't, please pause the film recording and just spend some time looking at it here. About the videos themselves, just to be very clear, they are of a simulated role play. They are not a film footage or recording of a real live case. They're not intended to demonstrate a mediation process from beginning to end. So while the same case scenario is used throughout the film clips, most of the questions demonstrated are done as a standalone learning tool. And I also need to say that the videos only demonstrate the asking of questions from the S questions model. They are not designed to demonstrate any other skills. For the delivery of learning to you on these S4 shift thinking questions, I have developed PowerPoint presentations, but also film footage to demonstrate each of these S4 shift thinking questions. I would really like to thank the role players, Eugene Boyle and Caoimhe Keoghan, who are themselves qualified mediators. The other modules in this series can be accessed by you as a self-study option, and they can be purchased either as individual standalone modules or as a full series of modules. You will find further information on o'sullivansolutions.ie. If you have already read the book, The Mediator's Toolkit, Formulating and Asking Questions for Successful Outcomes, then this training and the role-played film footage will help bring the learning from that book alive for you. And if you have not read this book, then having watched the films will be a reference for your reading and will help embed this learning. This book is available online and at all fine bookstores. Thank you.